Hello and welcome back to my channel, Skepticus. Today I have for you a parable of faith, fraud, and following orders. Because Jesus does not have a patent on parables. So let's jump into this little story for you. You find yourself out of work, needing a job. You've been cycling through jobs for a while. Maybe you've even been unemployed for a little while. You have a general sense that your career has been unfulfilling, empty even. You're trying to look for something that will bring much more meaning to your life and pay your bills. So a friend recommends that you apply to the company where he works, which is Gideon Online Digital. Now, you're not entirely sure exactly what it is that Gideon Online Digital even does. Their website has a lot of feel-good slogans and generic bits of advice, but it's hard to tell exactly what they sell or how they make a profit. You think that they offer some kind of self-help courses, but you're not really sure. But you apply anyway. Why not? You need a job. Your friend goes on endlessly about the benefits of working at Gideon Online Digital. And much to your surprise, you get hired. Although you later find out that Gideon Online Digital has a rather crazy track record of hiring almost anyone. Nevertheless, when you start the job, it initially feels like a revelation. Your coworkers are friendly and inviting. It almost has a sense of, dare I say, community. You're still a little confused about the company's mission, but you have a low-level job that doesn't require too much effort, and you don't spend too much time worrying about corporate objectives. You learn that the company was founded by Gideon. Gideon is very old, and no one has actually seen him in many years. In fact, it was so long ago that those people who actually saw him or spoke with him directly are all long dead. Nevertheless, everyone assures you that Gideon is still very much in charge of the company. In fact, they can scarcely stop talking about Gideon. They speak about him in wondrous and awestruck tones. They claim that there is nothing in business that Gideon can't do. They also, every single one of them, claim to have a personal relationship with Gideon. Now, this is despite the fact that none of them have ever actually seen Gideon. Not only has no one alive ever seen Gideon, there's not even a single picture of him anywhere. Not in the company, not on the website, not on the internet in any public records, no pictures, past or present, anywhere. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't any representations of him all around. There are generic drawings of an old man dressed in very old-fashioned attire. There are depictions of people appealing, apparently to Gideon, but they're appealing to someone who's just outside of the frame. Or they're appealing to someone who's strangely obscured in light. Gideon also had a son, Josiah, a very long time ago. According to your fellow employees, Josiah either did or does still or will one day help to run the company. The way they speak about it, it's all a little confusing. It should also be noted that Josiah is dead. Yeah, apparently he was caught up in some unfortunate incident where the authorities framed him for the crimes of many others and executed him. There's even rumors that Gideon had something to do with this or went along with it. It's very cloudy, but that all happened quite some time ago. So long ago, in fact, that the employees who actually knew Josiah in person are all dead by now. Regardless, everyone in the company swears that Josiah will return someday. And when he does, he'll run the company. Like his father, there are no direct pictures to be seen of Josiah, but he's referenced just as frequently as Gideon. There are a great many drawings of Josiah throughout the company, but you're not sure if these really represent what Josiah would have looked like. They all seem to be drawings of some generic, white, long-haired hippie kind of guy in sandals. Although this all seems pretty odd to you, you try not to think about it too much. After all, you've got a new job. The work is good. The employees are very friendly. And if the owner is a bit absent and eccentric, what does that bother you? But after you get settled in, you start to notice some additional peculiarities. Although the work is easy enough and the pace is manageable, you notice a few troubling patterns around employee recognition. Any time that you do anything well, whether it's a grand achievement or an inconsequential attaboy, your manager always heaps praise upon Gideon, or in some cases, Josiah, or Gideon and Josiah. It's not that you're ignored per se, it's more that your achievements are always reframed as somehow being made possible by Gideon or by Josiah. This approach is completely abandoned, however, anytime you make a mistake. All mistakes are yours and yours only. Your manager is very quick to tell you that you failed, despite the repeated offerings of Gideon and Josiah to help you along. Anytime you make such a mistake, you are admonished for not accepting the help of Gideon or Josiah. This is despite the fact that neither you nor anyone else in the company has ever actually seen Gideon or Josiah. And it's despite the fact that Josiah is very, very dead. Company-wide meetings are held once a week. Technically, they're voluntary, and you might like to skip some of them because, quite frankly, they kind of interrupt your ability to complete your normal work. But you've noticed that people are often low-key shamed if they don't attend. So you've been attending on the regular because you don't want to make any waves. Besides, the company-wide meetings are honestly kind of fun. There's a band, singing. There's no dancing, but people do a lot of swaying back and forth from their seats. The agenda for nearly the entirety of these meetings consists of talking about Gideon, hailing his great successes, praising him as an epic business leader. Gideon, of course, is never physically present at any of these meetings, although the employees routinely speak of him as though he's there the whole time. They also talk a lot in these meetings about his son, Josiah. They talk about him as though he's either right there with them or returning to them at some undetermined but imminent future date. Did I mention that Josiah is dead? The company-wide meetings also feature regular readings from the bylaws. The bylaws is a book that contains all corporate policy. Although the book is huge, they only ever read a few chosen sentences from the bylaws in any single meeting. Usually, the sentences chosen are designed to highlight some broader business principle. The only real caveat to the company-wide meetings is that you need to eat beforehand. The refreshments are atrocious. Everyone is given a tiny thimble of grape juice that wouldn't slake an ant. And they also get a single tasteless wafer that feels like styrofoam in your mouth. After you've been working there for several weeks, you run into a few scenarios where others are doing things that you believe are forbidden or unethical. You ask a few trusted coworkers for clarity in these situations. You're trying to figure out if you should report the questionable behavior or if you should just let it go. Your coworkers routinely answer by quoting small snippets from the bylaws. That would be fine, but unfortunately these snippets are often contradictory, and at a minimum they're all taken out of context. So you decide to get your own copy of the bylaws and see for yourself what they say. The bylaws seem to be very old, as in they were apparently written a long time ago. It seems that Gideon himself is credited with writing the original version of the bylaws. Many years later, Josiah seems to have written a newer addendum. But of course, Josiah's been dead for a very long time, and even the newer addendum is downright ancient by today's business standards. The bylaws gives firm instruction as to where you must park your horse and buggy during work hours. The bylaws tells you what kind of castor oil to administer to a sick coworker. The bylaws gives specific detail as to how and when you should beat your subordinates. These problematic passages and many, many others are strewn all throughout the bylaws. You never hear most of these deeply problematic passages quoted during the weekly company-wide meetings. They seem to carefully pick and choose the more palatable sentences when discussing the bylaws in a group. You ask a coworker about these troublesome passages, but they just kind of hand wave it away. Some suggest that the problematic policies in Gideon's older original section of the bylaws were replaced or made obsolete by Josiah's newer addendum to the bylaws. But this is not at all consistent with the text of either the older bylaws or the new ones. And the simple fact is that even Josiah's newer bylaws contain many dubious or contradictory instructions. Finally, you find a trusted coworker who gives you what feels like some actionable advice. They tell you, bring your concerns directly to Gideon. Now, at first, this suggestion shocks you. It didn't seem that Gideon was accessible in any way. But the trusted coworker assures you that it's possible to speak directly with Gideon or Josiah, your choice. The idea that you could somehow talk with Josiah is disturbing, but you decide to brush this off. The more pressing matter is to get corporate guidance on your problem. You ask your coworker how you can schedule an appointment with Gideon. He chuckles. He says that no one ever sees Gideon face to face in person, but you can talk to him anytime, whenever you want. He sees your confusion, so he goes on to explain that Gideon has an inbox. You just write up your concerns and shoot them off, send them to Gideon. He assures you that Gideon answers all of his emails. So you get Gideon's email address and you send him your questions. And you wait. The next day, there's no answer from Gideon. A few more days go by and you're beginning to feel ignored or at least kind of anxious. You go back to The coworker who told you to email Gideon, you explain that Gideon hasn't answered. He gives you a smug smile and says, "Oh, don't you worry. Gideon always answers emails." So you wait several more days for a reply, but there is no answer from Gideon. You hate to keep bugging your coworker, but you're not sure what else to do. His first thought is to scold you for your lack of faith in Gideon's response. You're not sure what this has to do with anything, but you keep listening. The coworker then tells you that Gideon reads all of his emails and he always responds, but in his own time. You're not really sure what to do with that. Does that mean a few more days, a week, a year? But the coworker cannot or will not give you an exact time frame in which you can reasonably expect to receive an answer from Gideon. The coworker then asks to see the message that you sent to Gideon in your sent emails. You show it to him and he explains that you may not have received an answer from Gideon because you didn't ask properly. When you send Gideon an email, he says, you're supposed to ask him to do his will. So you say, wait a minute. I'm supposed to ask Gideon, the CEO of our company, to do what he was already gonna do anyway. Or your coworker confirms that this is the case, and he's very satisfied with his answer. So then you ask your coworker, hey, have you ever received a reply from Gideon? And your coworker enthusiastically says, yes. So you ask to read the response that he received from Gideon. So your coworker pulls up the email that he sent to Gideon just a few weeks ago. In the email, he's asking Gideon whether he should apply for the new management opening. There is no response. You ask your coworker about the response, and your coworker shows you a red marker. Obviously, you're confused. So your coworker says, the mainline employees have blue hats. The managers have red hats. A week after I sent that email to Gideon, I found an extra red marker sitting on my desk when I arrived at work in the morning. You're not sure what to do about this. Days go by, and you never get any response from Gideon. When you talk to any other employees about your dilemma, they all tell you the same thing. Send your concerns to Gideon. They all assure you that Gideon reads and answers all of his emails. After another week, you check your bank account and realize that your first paycheck, which should have been deposited last Friday, never actually hit your account. When you ask your coworkers about talking to HR, they tell you that you can only talk to HR via email. And when you ask for HR's email address, you find that it is the same address as Gideon's email address. You send another email to Gideon, this time asking about your missing paycheck, and of course, you receive no response. Some of your coworkers stridently tell you that this is your fault. You need to have more faith in the system. You need to have more faith in Gideon. And if you had enough faith, none of this would have ever happened in the first place. There are other coworkers who tell you that this will all be fixed when Josiah returns from the dead. You can't afford to work for free, so you quit. When you file for unemployment benefits, you are denied. You ask them, why have your benefits been denied? And they claim that you never actually worked at Gideon Online Digital. You try to object by showing them your employee badge, your parking sticker, and tons of other evidence that proves you worked at Gideon Online Digital. Despite all of this plain evidence, they tell you that anyone who would ever leave Gideon Online Digital was never a true employee of Gideon Online Digital in the first place. This has been another episode of Cynical Sermons. And once again, to prove that Jesus does not have a patent on parables, this has been my parable of faith, fraud, and following orders. Thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, all the things. Go tell your grandmama, all of it. Send this out to your book club and your investing club, and no, don't do those things. But I hope you've enjoyed this little parable, and please stick around for more videos. Thank you very much.